All right, so Procreate doesn't really have a tools bar, at least not in the tradition of Photoshop and Krita. Its tools are scattered throughout that top bar you see there. Currently I have the brush tool active, which means I can just draw. If I want to undo, I can click this little arrow right there. The brush size is controlled here and the brush opacity there. And by the way, you also have a redo feature here. So if you click on the brush icon while it's active, you get your brush selections. And Procreate has laid it out nicely. I've got sketching, inking, drawing, calligraphy, painting. It's pretty self-explanatory. Pick a brush you want and go ahead and paint with it. This tool to the right of the brushes is the smudge tool. And once again, if you click on it while it's already active, I can pick an appropriate smudge tool brush. I want something thicker, so maybe in the painting box, let's just go with this flat brush. And I can smudge with the flat brush. In all three of these softwares I'm showing, there are ways to customize your brushes, but I'll talk about that in the brushes section. The smudge tool, by the way, also has opacity and size on the same slider control on the left. This is the eraser tool. Right now I've got a pencil brush selected for that tool. Again, I can click the eraser, select a larger brush, and erase that way, controlling size and opacity again over here. To make a selection in Procreate, you choose this button that kind of looks like an S for selection, I guess. By default, it gets you to the freehand selection tool, so I can draw myself a little shape. And to make that selection active, I have to choose one of these options at the bottom. So I'll click Add. This basically adds that shape to my selected area. So for example, I can make another shape, push Add again, or make another shape, push Remove, and it removes it. Again, pretty self-explanatory. If I wanted to say paint inside my selection, I now click on the brush and go ahead and paint, and it's painting clipped to my selection. Once I'm finished with my selection, I can click the S button again to turn it off, and I'm back to my full canvas. Let me just change the color for some variety here. Whenever I paint these abstract canvases, they get real boring. Sorry about that. I promise they'll get more interesting later when I actually do real paintings with these three pieces of software. Let's go back into the selection tool. I've got my rectangular selectors, my ellipse selectors. If I click the feather button, I can change the softness of the edge of my selection. It's a bit hard to see, but if I go up into my brush tool here, you can see how it's fading away, just like we saw with Krita. You could also make a selection, then click this arrow tool, which turns it into a scaler or a rotator. You can click the distort option and distort. You can warp it. All the stuff we saw in the previous two examples. Freeform, which is just another scaling mode that's non-uniform like this. You could flip your selection horizontal and vertical and rotate it and all this fun stuff. Then of course there's a handy reset button there in case you don't like what you did. And then to exit out of that, just again, click the arrow tool. Let me go back into the selection tool real quick. The other thing to note about the freehand selector, yes, I could draw a shape like this, or if I push clear to get rid of that, I can simply tap and it makes a point-by-point selection like the polygonal lasso tools we've seen previously. The other toolbar related thing to look at, if you go to the wrench icon, this is where the crop tool is. Assuming I'm on the canvas link here, I can go to crop and resize, and I can drag these handles to crop my image. I could also add canvas space if I want by dragging beyond the borders. But if I just go in there, I could use this handy rotation tool if I want. And if I like my changes, I can hit done. And there we have our freshly cropped canvas. You might have noticed there's no paint bucket tool in Procreate. But filling a color is easy. Let me just go select a different color. All you do is drag that red color I just picked from the little color dot on the upper right, just drag it onto the canvas, and there's your color fill. By the way, there's a hidden little feature here. Let's say I clicked that color and changed it, and clicked away. If I simply tapped and held my finger on that button, it changes back to my previous color. That's something I didn't know about for a long time. And that is about it for the toolbar related stuff in Procreate, and that also wraps up this chapter. Let's move on now to talk about brushes.